Right now, let's get on to business. Now, that's the business of our conversation this morning, looking at the multiplicity of data collection agencies. Now, concerted efforts have been made to harmonize biometric data collection, and that is to enhance uniformity and administrative convenience. We have Timothy Yusuf telling us more in this background report.
President Muhammadu Buhari had on August 10 directed all agencies involved in collection and usage of biometric data in Nigeria to harmonize the data. He enjoined all the agencies to work collaboratively instead of going in different directions, saying that adequate data was necessary for planning and development in any country. Already, the Federal Road Safety Corps and National Identity Management Commission have commenced a process of harmonizing biometric data as directed by the President. The National Identity Management Commission says the Commission will essentially make sure that it leverages on the presidential directive to reinforce the synergy it has been working on. Experts say the benefits of harmonization will, among other things, reduce the cost of governance, enhance public safety and national security, and guide best practices. Analysts believe that in these days of very scarce resources and dwindling national revenue due to the fluctuations that have become significant in the prices of crude oil, the need to harmonize various data collection agencies is imperative.
All right, thank you very much, there, correspondent Timothy Yusuf, for that brief background. Of course, we have experts in the studios who will elaborate on the points that you have itemized in that background report. First, joining us for this conversation this morning, we would like to welcome Malam Aliyu Aziz. He is the Director General and Chief Executive Officer of the National Identity Management Commission, known as NIMC. Malam Aliyu Aziz, a pleasure to have you on Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning, Nigeria.
Okay. And then we also have with us in the studios, of course, he's been our guest from time to time in the course of discussing matters relating to ICT. He's an expert in information and communication technology management, Abdul Hakim Ajijola. Ajijola, once again, our pleasure to have you.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Okay, Claire?
Yes, Kingsley. We also have with us the Executive Director, Center for Cyber Awareness and Development, Dr. Bayero Agabi. He's with us right here in our studio. Dr. Agabi, thank you very much for joining us.
Nigerians.
All right, gentlemen, thanks. We hope to be joined subsequently by another guest, but let's begin this conversation by exploring what exactly data means, the kind of data that is requested of an individual, which of course then translates into information and then goes into a repository. I'm asking this question because a number of persons out there innocently deliver up their personal data. They'll say, oh, come, sign the thing. This is, of course, give us your name, give us your date of birth, X, Y, Z. But what kind of data are we looking at when we say data is out there in the public domain or in some repository? Let's begin with the DG of NIMC.
Well, thank you very much. When you talk about an individual data, first of all, you are talking about the person's name. So in a small community, the name is enough to distinguish the person from other people. But in the 21st century, in fact, data of an individual is in fact the water and also the air for 21st century. And therefore, you need, apart from the date of birth of the person, you also require his biometrics. And these biometrics are in three categories. You need the facial biometrics, you also need the fingerprint and the iris. So depending on the size of the database, if you have, like India, that is more than 1 billion, then you have to use iris. But for Nigeria, that is around 200 million, then the fingerprint and the facial will be enough. And then you have the demographic data to talk about the address of the person, where he lives, and also in our own case where there's no much data, you may ask the person his state of origin and ask for his parents, ask for his guardian, and also ask for his next of kin, should in case there is an issue with him. So those are the basic data that we call them compulsory data that we collect. But because there is no much data in Nigeria, we go ahead to collect so much information, and we keep all this information in the form of a database that is also distributed not only in one location, so that if there is problem with the data in one location, you will still get the data from other places.
Okay, let me ask Abdul Hakim here. You know, the question the viewer may want to ask is, why are we focusing on personal data, collection? So I'd like you to tell us, what's the relevance of personal data collection to our national development?
Thank you very much. Basically, I think the question of why is so important. We need to collect this national data on all of us so that we can manage access to resources, we can manage access to responsibilities. So, for example, if person A is not a Nigerian, there may be some resources that they may not be eligible for. There may be some rights that may not be for them, and definitely there may be some responsibilities, such as voting, which may not be for them. So I think the why is very, very important. And that takes us actually to the next issue is after identity management, and that is authentication. At the end of the day, you have to be able to trust that the person you are speaking to is actually the person you are supposed to be speaking to, that the identity of the person is actually genuine. And I'd like to touch on authentication in a few more minutes. But
I'd still like you to calm down, because the viewer, the ordinary Nigerian that is watching this program right now, how does this benefit him? How does it affect him?
Well, for example, as both of us have indicated, if you can identify that somebody is not a Nigerian, maybe they are no longer eligible for scholarships. You see, if you can identify that somebody is a Nigerian, then there are certain maybe laws and rules and regulations that they must obey. Whereas if, for example, you are identified as a diplomat, maybe those laws or rules are waived or watered down. So for the ordinary person in the street, what for me I think is the most important single element is trust. That the person you are interacting with is actually who you say it is. As the DG of NIMSI had given an example, in the small village of old, simply Claire, daughter of so and so and so, was sufficient as identification. But as you know, as urbanization and modernization have come, and you come to the big cities, there is a great deal of, what's the word, anonymity. So you really don't know who is whom, you don't know their background, you don't know things about them, and it becomes extremely critical and extremely important for the ordinary person. We're trying to compensate for modernization, basically.
All right, Ajijola, thanks a lot, Abdul Hakim. Ajijola, thank you very much there, as well as the DJ name. So let's bring in Dr. Bayero Agabi into the conversation at this time. Dr. Agabi, you've listened again to the preliminary remarks by the other guests. Again, still exploring the preliminaries of this conversation. Who is entitled to demand and receive your personal information data?
Well, thank you very much. It's not a thing. There are government agencies, that are entitled to asking for various data. But I think we should look at data beyond just human data, because the essence of data is to plan. Is to plan our economy, know how much money we earn, know where to deploy the money. If it's not enough, you know where to get the other money. And they also know that number of people live on certain streets. If a new person joins, you are able to know that another person has joined. And then also being able to understand that
each home may require certain amount of infrastructure that you have to deploy. So one of the importance of having your data is for national planning in such a way that you can guess or you can know whether your country is growing or stagnated. That being said, data today beyond the human fingers or the hair lead or the eye lead and all of those things is becoming your movement. It's becoming your activities on the cyberspace. You have a child today, you put him on her on Facebook or whatever, and then your friend congratulates you, and the next day you say you're going to have what do you call it, a birthday party and the rest of it, and you put your date and everything, and all their friends will say, okay, we'll be there and all of that. So anyone can harvest all of those information, and process it. Harvest those data, process it, information on you that can physically have a negative or positive impact on you. So those are the things I see that we most of the time when we discuss data management, we always leave out, we concentrate much more on our fingerprint and who we are, and then how we manage who we are.
Okay, you have a follow-up question?
No, well, I just pop the question to the other guests, but just to indicate that we have from our Lagos network studios at this time is the president of the Institute of Information Management Governing Council, Dr. Oyedokun Oyewole. Dr. Oyewole, it's our pleasure to have you on Good Morning Nigeria.
It's mine. Good morning, Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Okay, now let me stay with you, Dr. Oyedokun. Now, I asked of course, Hakim and the other guests, what is the relevance of this, of personal data collection to our development? For instance, Kingsley and I, among the fortunate ones that have received our national identity card, I have the BV. I've also gotten my other particulars, driving particulars. Now, for those who have not been captured, by this data collection exercise, what do they risk? What is the risk for them?
The need to have a centralized database can never be overemphasized. Information, like they say, is the lifeblood of any organization, any nation, or any individual. And the need to ensure that information is properly captured, properly stored, and also, stored in a way that retrieval becomes seamless. It's something that is very, very key to the growth of any nation. The challenges, part of the challenges we're faced with in Nigeria today, like I always say, whenever I have the opportunity, is not really about corruption, but it has to do with the fact that in Nigeria and some African countries, access to information is a very, very big issue. And most of the government policies that are being made on data that does not exist. And in a situation where you're basing your decision on information and data that lack quality, that are not complete, that lack integrity, at the end of the day, you are bound to make mistakes by making wrong policies. And you will agree with me that the fact that Nigerians are crying and clamoring for dividend of democracy can actually be traced to this, because most of the government decisions that have been taken are not based on data that are of high quality. They are not data that are properly captured. They are not data that are properly stored. And even in Nigeria today, we don't have a data protection law in any way. The National Identity Project has been on for a while now. And you can imagine a project of that magnitude without any policy, without any national law that governs how information should be captured, how information should be stored, how information should be used, how it should be shared, these are technical issues that I think the National Identity Management Commission need to look into. It's something that is of utmost importance for them to hasten the passage of the Privacy Act in Nigeria, because if you get my data, how am I so sure that you're going to use my data for the purpose for which you mentioned that you're going to use it for? You find a lot of organizations in Nigeria today. They collect data from customers, they collect from vendors, from other stakeholders, and at the end of the day, they use those data for other purposes. But if there are laws that governs all of these things, you can be rest assured that in terms of the quality of the decision that government will be taking, it will really improve drastically. The citizens will even be confident to give out information, because in a situation where I'm not sure, I don't know what they are going to do with my data, it becomes an issue. Individually, I would want to protect myself, and I wouldn't want my data to get into the wrong hands. So these are some of the issues. But, it is very, very pertinent that for any nation to develop, for any nation to grow, there is need for us to have a centralized database which the law enforcement can take advantage of. Those stakeholders in the financial sector too could access such a facility, and so on and so forth. So primarily, information is key, and I would advise the federal government of Nigeria to declare a state of emergency on information management in the country.
All right, Dr. Oyewole, before we come to the declaration of a state of emergency, let's still discuss the subject. Thanks a lot for so far. But again, to return to the question, Dr. Oyewole touched on that briefly. I asked the question earlier, and this is why I'm asking the DG namesake to take up. Who is entitled to collect your personal data, and how much is such a person or such an entity, required to extract from you?
Okay, so there are fundamentally two types of data that is being collected from an individual. There is what we call foundational data and also functional data. Foundational data have to do with vital registration. That is to when a child is born and is given a birth certificate. And there is very clear law with the National Population Commission to carry out this activity. And that data have to be then input into the NIMSI database as a breather document. And then we capture the biometrics. So you don't capture biometrics of a child until the child is like 6 or 16 years. And then you capture when the biometrics are matured. So that is when NIMSI captures this data. Then all the other databases are called functional databases. Like if you, only when you want to drive that you go and look for driver's license. So that is functional, and you also pay for that kind of information. The foundational data that is collected, you usually don't pay. And then if you want to travel, and also only maybe 5% of population in all nations that travel, and then you go and obtain a passport to travel. So that is also functional for traveling. Then you also, if you want to open a bank account, you go to the bank and also they collect. So what is required is that for the biometrics, if the biometrics is taken by an institution like NIMSI, then in each of the functional places that he goes to, he doesn't need to give biometrics again. Central database. So, but Nigeria has been a special freedom. We are the only country that we don't have data. Any other country that they have birth registration data, they also, you can't move from one part of the country to another part of the country without even having a single we should we should harmonize all this database. All the institutions that have been capturing data should come together and harmonize this data so that we should be part of the 21st century institution. And then the importance, as you said, is there in the budget. You don't do budget you do budget for people, and you need the count of the people to do the budget. You need also, as my colleagues mentioned, for planning purposes. And finally, for security, especially my brothers and sisters in the Northeast that have experienced these insurgencies knows the importance of having some form of identity to identify themselves. Because whatever you do, if you have a form of identity, then the security agencies will clear you out. If you don't have anything else, then you are a suspect. So before there should be any problem, we need to capture the data of all our citizens and all the people resident in Nigeria, and we categorize them so that we should be able to organize our economy, organize our nation properly.
All right, thanks. I was just going to say, Ajijola, can we establish a dichotomy between public and private institutions in terms of data collection? Now, from what the NIMSIP DG has just described for the foundational and functional, there will be mandatory data that an individual will be required to disclose. Now, when it gets to the private sector, private sector participation, what is the extent that is reasonable, and what is the extent that will be unreasonable in terms of hazards to data in the hands of some other persons?
Well, I think the DG has actually put it quite eloquently that, for example, the biometrics, really there should be one primary repository of that, which by law is NIMSI. So the collecting those biometrics, and we're talking not just private sector now, we're not just talking of the banks or the telephone companies, we're talking of road safety, we're talking of INEC, that they should be able to, yes, collect the specific information they need for the functionality. But having said that, the biometrics, they should be able to refer back to NIMSI to get, so that you have very consistent biometrics. Because at the end of the day, identity management is about one person or one machine, as the case may be, but one entity having one identity. Now, I'd like to just continue for a moment on the issue of, I raised earlier about the authentication. Who has access to resources? There are three factors of authentication. There is basically what you know, which is a password. There is also what you have, which may be an ATM card. And there is also what you are, which is your fingerprint. Now, very quickly, the importance of all of this for the future. And the DG had alluded to it that, but our ancestors, for example, used cowries. At a point in time, we now used gold. At a subsequent point of time, we now started using this. And pray tell, what is this? This is money. This is cash. But really, at the end of the day, it's just a piece of paper. We may worship it, or some people may worship it, but really it's just paper with some ink. Now what is happening, we have moved to plastic. Those ATM cards, we're getting into zeros and ones. The next generation of money is actually going to be cryptocurrencies, a series of data sequences. How do you manage money in the future? The way you manage money is through authentication. And the challenge I see for Nigeria at the moment is that some of our authorities, very specifically the Mint, is not actually thinking about what's the next generation of money. Because that next generation of money is based on authentication of NIMSI data. There's an interconnection here. So that really, when you think about the basics of our economy, the basics of money, which is not cash, but it's a trusted intermediary of value. That is all money is. Whether it's paper, gold, cryptocurrencies, cowries, it doesn't matter. They are all the same thing. Trusted intermediary of value. And I think, and I'm worried as a Nigerian, that if we do not get our identity management right, especially the biometrics, if we have too many too many databases with the same thing, then I think we are going to have a big problem in the future. Having said that, we do have to be careful. You cannot put everything in one database. That's also not safe from a privacy point of view. But I would agree 110% with the DG that especially those foundational, those very key biometric information should be kept. And when we say a single repository, again, he has mentioned that it may be distributed in many parts of the country for backup purpose. But what I mean is that it's under a particular management. And if I may bring it down to our compounds, most of us have seen compounds where we have 1 or 2 gates. But what ends up happening? We close one gate and keep one open, use one. Even NTA here. And there's a reason for that. It's easier to secure a single gate than to secure multiple gates. So at the end of the day, yes, road safety should have a database, but it should be able to take the core biometric information from NIMSI. The CBN should have its BVN database, for example, but the core biometric information should come from NIMSI. At least this is my perception and belief, yes.
Okay. Let me also bring in Dr. Agabi here. We understand that some of the data collection projects are awarded to expatriates. Now, if you consider the huge personal data out there in the hands of those companies, do you think it is safe?
For me, the safety of data will be based on how the data is being collected. I think the entire conversation is getting mixed up at certain points, because we use the word data and in another way we say information. We have to be clear about what data is and what information is. And for data, and then again we specify, specifically discussing about the individual, we should be able to tie even properties, what the individual owns, because if you just take data about me and about my eyes, about all of those things and all that, how do you know other data that I have, especially when you have to, that issue of the Code of Conduct Bureau and the rest of it, those are the things that comes with data when you collect it. And then when you process it, it becomes an information, that you can use, for prosecution, for any other thing that you have to do. Okay, be that as it may, I would just want to make a little reference to what Ajijola has said, about data collection from the various agencies. I do not think it would be wrong to have NIMSI agents, in all these various agencies, rather than allow them collect those data independently and then wait for them to, turn those data into NIMSI. So if you have NIMSI working in the same place with other agencies like the road safety, like the police, maybe some of the private agencies like the telcos and all of that, I think it will be easier to say, okay, we have seamless data collection and all of those things. Because as we speak, if you privately speak to some of these people that collect, some of these agencies that collect data, they will always tell you that they do not trust this other data, but they trust what they are collecting. And then sometimes they take your data and then you come back again, they tell you that the data is not available, that you have to come back, for you to be re-verified before your phone can work or any other thing can work. So I think we should take data very seriously. Taking it seriously is awareness and education. We are here speaking, I think we are speaking English, or permit me to say grammar that is above many Nigerians, because when we say data, many people may not understand what it is, but we can stay here for 1 hour, many still will not understand why they should have their data collected and the rest of it. But I think we should tone it down a little bit so people begin to understand how very important data is, why you should give it out, and why it should be managed very carefully. The National House of Assembly, they keep, talking about more money should go to certain states and another money should go to another state. Is because we do not have data that is trusted, we do not have data that is authentic, we do not have data that we can rely on. So we just assume that perhaps Kano or Lagos may be bigger, or Port Harcourt may need more money, all those kind of things. These are the reasons. So it affects our political being, it affects our economic situation, it affects our movement, it affects our security. So the entire planning of the country, the growth and the prosperity of the country is dependent on the amount of data and integrity of the data that you have.
Well, Dr. Gabi, thanks a lot. Again, you just elaborated on the advantages of proper data management, or personal information management, and the allied purposes for which such could be utilized. But let's go back to Lagos. Dr. Oyewole, again, before a state of emergency is declared as you proposed, let's take a look at this. You mentioned the necessity of having a Privacy Act in the country for the purposes of guarding against the misuse or abuse of personal data or information in the hands of whoever is. But I asked the question to the other guests, and I would like to pose the question to you. There's a presumption of a dichotomy between public and private collectors of personal data. And for a private collector, say a telecommunications company, how much information, personal information, are you required to disclose, and how much of it can you withhold without you being denied of the service for which you're applying?
Thank you very much. Beyond data collection, it is very important to have in place standards, specification. And in our society, we lack that. Government can afford to spend as much as they like on these projects. If there are no standards, different data collector will decide to use their own standard. And in reference to what Dr. Bayero said about data quality, majority of those that are charged with the responsibilities of collecting data, a good number of them don't even know why they are doing what they are doing. A lot of them don't know their roles and responsibilities. A good number of them are just doing it because they need to work. They need to belong to an organization. If we are really serious as a country, about this project, I think it is very important for us to ensure that there are standards in place. We have enabling laws, and those individuals that are collecting data, there has to be certain requirements. Before you can be collecting data, you have to be trained, you have to be certified, you have to know what information management is, you have to know what information security, what information privacy is. I can say here authoritatively that a good number of people that are charged with that responsibilities do not even know what all of these things are. So the issue of education is very, very important, and certification too. Because if I'm going to entrust my data, or if I'm going to give out my information to any individual, I want to be sure that such individual knows the implication of the information that is being given out. And it's not just giving out the information alone. We have to ensure that those information are properly captured, because what will be the benefit at the end of the day if we spend that much on a project like this, and the quality of data that are being collected is not something that can actually be used, for decision making. So there is need for all the agencies that are charged with the responsibility of data collection to ensure that they are not just working in isolation, they are working based on a stipulated standards. And I think NIMC should focus on this and try to partner with stakeholders to ensure that, you know, we're able to develop a kind of homegrown standard, you know, that can work in our environment, things that people can relate with here, so that it will really go a long way, because once our people know that this information being collected is for their good, they want to plug into the project. And you know, we need to simplify things and also make sure that we have a very clear roadmap as to how this project is going to be executed. So I think it is key for us to ensure that there are standards in place. Once we have standards, the individual organizations collecting all the data would have a basis, you know, for the operation, and the project will be successful at the end of the day.
Thank you. The question now will be to, of course, NIMC boss here. What will be your capacity? Do you have the capacity, you know, to manage such, of course, unified data collection at that level? But we'll get your response as soon as we take the tweets that have come in. We've got quite a number of them. The first one is from Festus Akimboiwa, and he tweets, "Harmonization of personal data can help in the fight against crime and corruption."
And then we have this from Sarikin Wasa of Lokoja. It says, "Nice job. Just that we don't have light to watch you live as usual. Good morning to all of you out there." So we hope you are watching us now using an inverter.
Well, all right. Sunny Michael or Makuji tweets, "Lack of professionalism and competent personnel plus policy lopsidedness are some of the reasons why we have duplication of data collection agencies in existence but without results."
Olushola A has another tweet. "Why is it that it takes so many months to produce original NIMC card?"
All right, again, Festus Akimboiwa is tweeting, "Harmonization of our personal data collection agencies will ensure our data, especially sensitive ones, are kept secured. In fact, it is a task that must be done."
Mike Ayakwa has this. "With a good national ID card in place, the issue of personal information / data collection will no longer be a challenge."
Francis Kadri, "I have registered for the NIMC since 4 years ago. Like many Nigerians, I'm yet to receive my ID card."
Ibrahim Tudu, "It's so easy for foreigners and neighboring countries' citizens to obtain Nigerian ID card. No background information is requested by NIMC. Why?"
All right, and this is Utuekong Success Umo tweets, "I did my national identity card since 2013. Until now, I have not received it. Too much of information managers in Nigeria."
Kachala Mala, "Harmonizing data will surely reduce government spending and duplication of data collection."
So, Madam Aziz, what is the capacity of NIM to do
Okay,
this?
yeah, thank you very much. Well, when it comes to capacity, and Mr. Oyewole mentioned about the need to have standards and specification, and also to be certified. So I want to let you know that NIMC is ISO certified and also MasterCard certified. And by going through this, it means that all the processes to do with an identity is certified. And also, we have taken the steps to step back and not to do something that will not work. And whatever that we do is something that you can audit. And we know, because stakeholders of identity are not only within Nigeria, but globally. And I will tell you that if you are now applying for visa, either for US or any of the Schengen, they will ask you for national identification number. Without us, asking them to do that. Why? Because they verified that this is a process that is unique, that will give Nigerians unique identification. Also, our enrollment officers are trained. We take 2 weeks to train them on data alone. You will take about 3 days to talk about data and then the importance of collection of that data before they can even come onto the computer. And since 2008, we have harmonization and integration committee that is made of all the agencies that have been capturing data. And I've seen collaboration, and we have been working. We generated the standards that are required, and all of them are on our website. Then recently we have also worked out regulations, and they are also up there in the website for comments from the general public. So to summarize, I can say that we have the capacity, and Nigerians are easily trainable, and we have all our staff are graduates. They are easily trainable, and they are certified to do this particular work. In fact, between last November that I came and now, they have captured close to 7 million people. It's unprecedented. So with just little resources.
Why are people not receiving their...
So those are, from the tweets, there are 2 important questions. That one that's talked about, it takes several months to get a card, and the other one was to talk about foreigners collecting NIMSI card. So on the first one, that on the card issue, we have been registering and also trying to tell people that it is actually your number, the national identification number, that is your own identity. A card is just a token, but because we have been used to card, so we think that it's the card that is the identity, but no, as Ajijola says, that you need the data, and you need to keep the data securely, and you need to authenticate or verify this data. And most of this thing is going to happen electronically, not really when you get the card. So as much as that, but it takes time because there's been funding constraint, and we are in recession. Therefore,
how much time does it take? I'm sorry, I'm taking words from you. How much time does it take? Because some people said 2013, and some said 4 years ago. I remember I'm one of the lucky ones. I got mine just last year.
Yeah.
Yes. So how long does it take?
You see, for the current registration, which we started in February 2012, but we have not started the card because, as I said, we concentrated on the number, because the number is the identity. We have not started the card until late 2014, 2014 that we started producing the card. Therefore, we have a lot of backlogs, but it also takes a lot of process. It is a general multipurpose card, as you know. It has so much applets in it, and it is secure. So, and also we, not only our own capacity too, there are Nigerian companies in Lagos that can also produce the card. But as I said, we need resources to do that, and we are printing. Very soon we'll be able to do a big ban, and everyone will get his own card. The second question was on the foreigners getting the national identity card. Again, that is a false information, because in all the enrollment centers that we have, we also have immigration officials, because they are the ones that are trained to identify who a foreigner is. We can register foreigners, but we should register them as foreigners, not register them as Nigerians. So we have these officials that helps us. And also, the SSS is also doing its job. A lot of time they may trace that there are some people that have gotten maybe local government paper and they went to NIMSI, they come with this information and we check our database. If it's there, we punch it. If it is, in most cases, it's not really there. So, and most of the staff, again, our staff that are at the border locations, they identify, they know who is a Nigerian and who is not a Nigerian. And also the Nigerians don't also allow people to really register as foreigners. So it's false.
Well, DG of NIMSI, but thank you very much. Just to indicate that, of course, the conversation is continuing. Before we go on this short break, I just want to make a comment on what you said about some embassies requiring applicants for visas to indicate their national ID number. Sometimes when you are completing the forms for visas, you find that the kind of information they require is even more than what you were required to put down for your national ID card. I mean, you're being asked about your father's particulars, the date of birth, you know, his height, and all. Well, of course, the height is not there yet, but the kind of information they mine from you, you just start wondering whether, you know, again, that's what I was asking, you know, who is competent to request you for certain kinds of data, and how much can you volunteer as an individual. But, of course, if you want to make a comment on that, that will be after this short break.